Morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Institute of Business Leadership business panel keynote. My name is Thomas Tran, and I serve AKPsi as fraternity president. So the Institute of Business Leadership is part of Brotherhood Unbounded. This is the AKPsi exclusive program designed to help our members stay connected to the brothers in the chapters, to help brothers learn how to cope with personal stress, mental health, and also help brothers develop skills beneficial to their career. This program is due in thanks to AKPsi's partnership with the Commonwealth Leadership Alliance. I am excited and pleased to introduce our speakers for this session. Moderating the panel is Tim Daniels, the Vice Chair of AKPsi's Foundation's Board of Directors. On the panel, we have Kyle Wong, CEO and co-founder of Pixlee, Charles Naut, angel investor and entrepreneur, Jenny Gerrard, Senior Proposal Operations Writer and Developer at Leidos, and Lauren Hayslett, UX Strategist for Makers Experience at Google. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Tim. Tim?
Awesome. Thanks, Thomas. I'm super excited to be here, and I know these panelists are as well. I think we've assembled a very diverse group of backgrounds and career progressions that will make this a very fun and informative session. We'll kind of kick it off with kind of our first kind of question. What do you feel that you gained from a transferable skill that kind of helped your career progression that's kind of started in the roots of AKPsi?
I can start off. So my first job was at Microsoft as a product manager, and I, in college, was a computer science student. So didn't really have a lot of classes or opportunities outside of AKPsi where I could develop my presentation skills, my sales skills, my kind of people management skills. So starting that new job, I really leaned on my experience in AKPsi, doing like fundraising drives and talking to my fellow AKPsi brothers to transition to that new career in product management. So those are three skills that really started in AKPsi, and I was able to take into my first job out of college.
Nice.
And I'll piggyback off of what Charles said. I would say one of the skills that I carry throughout my career and I continue to develop is definitely my communication skills. I'll never forget my very first role within AKPsi, and that was our Rush PR chair. So as you know, that's recruiting fresh talent, and that's, outreach with people that you don't know and engaging them in a conversation, educating them on what AKPsi is all about. And I've carried that same skill set in every capacity of my career. So when I was at IBM, I spent some time in a rotation program where I was supporting recruitment efforts. So I was, again, engaging talent at the university level, at the master's, MBA level, and bringing in talent, making them aware of what IBM does. And then I continue on that with that communication skill in the form of mentorship in my current role at Leidos. So being able to effectively convey information is a critical skill no matter what you do in your career.
I would jump in on that one as well. I would say the soft skills that you got to both learn and practice in AKPsi were some of the most important. That, along with my academy experience, that was a lot of really great personal feedback on how that, how your communication style is coming off, because you only know what you're trying to communicate. You don't always know how it's being received. And so getting that open, honest feedback and then getting to practice and try different things, different tactics is something that is really hard to learn, and you need it in whatever job you're going to. So AKPsi definitely helps with that.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll just add is not necessarily a skill set, but I felt like the network was really instrumental in my career. My co-founders are from AKPsi. Our first customers are from AKPsi. Some of our first investors are from AKPsi. And a lot of it is because these are people that we're able to trust throughout college and build both personal and professional relationships. And I think that trust is one of those things I know we'll touch upon later, but it's one of those things that is really hard to develop with people and that level of camaraderie. So for me, that level of trust that we're able to have in a lot of the first influential people in our company being from AKPsi really helped us get off the ground.
No, awesome. Thank you. And kind of maybe a nice segue into that, how has being a principal business leader affected your career and helped your careers progress?
Well, I'm not sure if this is exactly how what you're asking, but I think that in business in general, like your reputation is everything. And I think now with social media and the internet, the reputation, it's a two-way street. It could be really, really good or really, really bad. And I think information just gets around, and word of mouth marketing and about you as a person just gets around a lot more. So I think in general, like that reputation that you have, it travels with you, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and I'll again piggyback off of what Kyle said. I think his response was from a much larger scale. When you're talking about social media, all eyes are on you in some way, shape, or form. I'll kind of bring it in a little closer to your immediate community, to your team. And I would have to say that when you're a principal business leader, you're bringing the whole package. You're bringing your whole self. If someone were to observe you, they would be saying, okay, I can see how she works through problems. I can see how she interacts with people. I can see how she manages a challenging situation or a difficult personality. And that's being observed. Just like if someone sees something that you post on social media, the team, the decision makers within your organization, they're witnessing that. And that's going to help you progress through your career, because they'll say, gosh, Jenny worked with a client that's just really been historically very difficult to close on sales, difficult to communicate with back and forth. She had the ability to connect with them, find common ground. That skill set is going to prove her well, as she progresses her career, whether it's at Leidos or beyond on a larger scale. So I would have to say it's your whole package. It's how you treat others, how people perceive you. I think all of those things will help you progress your career.
Nice. And kind of as you're talking about kind of career progression, how have each of you kind of supplemented your, maybe undergrad or even graduate education to bring kind of additional training or additional personal development in your careers as you kind of progressed?
I can definitely touch on that because learning is definitely one of my core values. It's something that I'm always looking for, whether it's in an actual more formal educational experience or if it's just in the opportunities or projects that I'm working on at the moment. I'm always there because I'm trying to learn something and do something interesting. I've done a variety of things. Some of it has been really formal. Some of it is finding your local community groups and going to talks, finding interesting speakers, showing up and listening. And the cool thing about the time that we're in right now, where everything is actually happening virtually, is it actually now no longer matters where you live. If you feel like attending a talk in London, go for it, because it's on Zoom, so you can actually do that. I've also more formally continued my education through an MBA program, trying to round out some of my skill sets that I started on in undergrad. I was an econ undergrad, so a little bit farther from the marketing and sales side of the house, and realized that was something that I wanted to learn more about and get into. But I think there's a lot of ways to learn. You can learn almost anything on YouTube. And so just if you're hungry for it and you're interested in it, even if it's super obscure, go, because what you're passionate about is important. And that often becomes a really interesting conversation that you end up in an interview. I actually was a dancer in my younger years and had a really fascinating 45-minute interview about a friend, this person I was interviewing with at a consulting firm. He kept getting dragged to the ballet by his friends, and he hated it. And he's like, how can I make this experience more enjoyable? And that was my interview. So you never know where your passion will take you.
Wow.
For me, this is where something that Kyle mentioned, the AKPsi network, has really been invaluable. There's people that I really admired, especially certain skills that they had or traits that they had. And as they've progressed through their careers, I've been able to learn from them and ask them questions and grow my own skills and take what aspects of them that I admired and learn from them and grow. So AKPsi network has been really helpful for my career progression and supplementing my career.
And I'll add on to that. And in addition to academia and leveraging your network, my add-on would be reach out. Let your team know, let your manager know, I'm hungry to grow. I have an interest in this area. And what has worked for me in the past is by scheduling one-on-ones with some industry leaders or leaders within my organization. And to be quite honest, 9 times out of 10, they're more than happy to accept a 30-minute kind of virtual coffee chat, so to speak. And the few folks that have said no usually default and say, I'm slammed, my schedule's blocked, but I really recommend you follow up with so-and-so. So 9 times out of 10, most people want to help you and connect you to the people that are going to help answer your questions. My only caveat is manage expectations. Let people know what you're after. You know, my name is Jenny Gerrard. I'm currently a proposal manager. I'm managing a team of 20. I'm interested in adding more value to the company. You know, I'd really like to pick your brain about the following 2 or 3 topics. So this way, no one likes surprises. This way, again, I think it just leads to a more constructive conversation if you give people a heads up for who you are, where you're coming from, and what you hope to achieve in that conversation.
Yeah, early in my career, I was able to network with a lot of people in the marketing industry and advertising industry through actually the AKPsi alumni network. Just honestly, just through LinkedIn and searching people up and seeing what they were doing. And you know, I think especially when you're emerging in your career, you know, sometimes you don't have some of that point of view. And I think Lauren mentioned this before, but like you can learn a lot on YouTube these days, on the internet, on TikTok, on different industries. And I found that there's definitely things you can do though to impress people in that first meeting, to kind of build a longer relationship with them. One, it's obviously if you can send over a couple of questions ahead of time that also are like 1.0 generic, that, you know, show that you've done a little bit of reading into the space or a little bit of understanding their background. 2 is sending a follow-up email in terms of things that you're going to do or things you took away from that. And then 3, actually doing some of the recommendations that they recommend, whether that is they recommend that you look at an article, recommend that you speak with somebody, read this book. Most people actually don't do that. And I think that just doing those small things help you not only learn, but also build those longer term relationships as well.
Nice. And kind of talking, you've all kind of touched about kind of the AKPsi network in different ways and the AKPsi core values in different ways. Can you kind of, in that context, kind of maybe talk about your career decisions? Kyle and Charles, you're angel investor and, you know, an entrepreneur, you know, a company co-founder. You know, Lauren and Jenny have definitely had a very successful, I'd say, more in the corporate careers. And just how you've kind of maybe either broke away from the corporate career to kind of start yourself, or how you've kind of progressed to different senior levels of your organizations. So that was a very long-winded question, and I'll let you guys kind of take that and unpack that as you wish. But kind of in the context of kind of using the network and the core values of how you make your decisions of where you stand today.
Yeah, I guess I can quickly start on that one. I think and provide a little additional context for everybody. So like our company, we're roughly like 100, 110 people. And if you've ever gone online shopping and you've seen like the customer photos or the reviews when you bought something online, perhaps a couch or something during COVID, we're the ones that power that technology. And I think that for us, it's I think from my journey, a combination of both grit and also consistently evolving. The grit part, just because, you know, doing things when things are going well, like everyone can do it, but it's really when things get difficult, when you face adversity, that's really what I think what separates people, especially in the startup world, is that when things don't go your way, when you get rejections, that's when some people quit, honestly. And so I think that's one really big part of it. And the second part is consistently evolving, because my job changes every 6 months as the company continues to grow. And a lot of it has to do with how fast I can also evolve with it, but also about the team and how that team evolves. So over time, especially when you become a manager, it's a lot less about you, and it's a lot more about like the team and making sure that they are put in a position to be successful. So I would say that you move a little bit from just being about you and how you can grow your career to actually more focusing on other people and how they're evolving.
Yeah, to add to that, I would say also, not only is the team evolving, the market is evolving, the industry is evolving, what's important is evolving and, you know, continuing to think through how you can add value, what your perspective is, and then what that can bring to the team, to the business. It doesn't matter the size of the team. It could be 5 people, it could be 100,000 people, it doesn't matter. But thinking through that, and also knowing what is important to you and staying true to that, because also things are evolving and changing constantly. You can end up doing a job that you're like, how did I get here? I don't know why I'm doing this. This is not in my wheelhouse. I'm not really good at this, or I don't like this. And so making sure that you understand what you're good at, what's important to you, what your core values are, and then making your career decisions and navigating where you can have the most impact and also still be true to yourself.
Yeah, and I'll add to that without repeating any of that goodness, because I agree with what both Lauren and Kyle said. But it's also engaging the right people on your team. I mean, Kyle said his organization is growing, and as you take on more responsibility in your career, usually the team or the folks that report into you also will grow as your responsibility increases. So it's understanding what are you really, really good at, and what are things that you can farm out or teach other people. Because one of the challenges I've had in my career is people will say, Jenny, you're our go-to management writer. You just really know how to craft a very compliant and compelling story. You know how to connect the dots with our customers' pain points, and then the technical solutions that Leidos can offer, whether it's a tech transformation or rehaul, whatever it might be. And I've learned it's just not sustainable. I can't always be the one go-to person. And at one point in time, I thought, this is great. I'll always be in demand. But what I realized is, in order for me to scale this capability, I need to train people underneath me so that it's not just relying on one person. If anything, that's introducing risk into the equation if you're banking on one person to always be there for all of your business needs. So I would recommend also, I don't have all the answers. So the best thing that I've done to progress my career is be very humble and say, I am not a solution architect. I need to engage people that can educate me on this platform so that I can speak intelligently about it. So yes, I wear many hats, but I always stay true to my core values, and I'm very humble in reaching out to people that I need to make myself and my team stronger.
I would also add that you shouldn't be afraid to take those big risks to actually make the career transitions or follow that path that you think is actually right for you. My first job was at Microsoft, but I only lasted there for about 1.5 years before I realized I didn't see myself being there long term. And it was actually my co-founder for my last startup. She was also an AKPsi person that I met in college. And she had started her career off in banking and realized that wasn't for her. And we kind of teamed up together and decided to start something on our own. And it took that time at Microsoft for me to really realize that going down that path wasn't right. And leaving, even though it was a cushy job, seemed risky. It seemed risky because, I was making more money than my parents at that time, to go off and do something where I was not going to make any money for a foreseeable future. But looking back, that was the right decision. And I would be unsatisfied if I didn't take that risk. And the AKPsi network was really there to support me with co-founders and my first customers. And, Kyle was also like an important support for me during that time. So being able to take that risk and using AKPsi network to really help me make that transition was really beneficial.
Would you have any advice you'd give to someone trying to change career paths? Obviously, Charles, you went probably one of the most extreme career path changes you can. But even if you're changing teams or areas of the company that you're in, you don't have to, start your own business. But as you're looking to make changes, what advice would you give people?
I would definitely try to get as much exposure to that path before actually making the jump as you can, whether that's reaching out on LinkedIn to people who might be in that career that you want to, and ask if you can shadow them, ask if you can learn more, and get grab a short meeting with them just so you can try it out without actually committing and making sure that it is something that you want to go down. I know some people who decided they wanted to go down a certain path, and when they went down that path, they realized it was not the right one. and they'd have to pivot again. So as much as you can, figure out if that is the right choice for you. I would try to do that.
Yeah, and kind of to give an example, let's just say that you have like 3 people that work in accounting that want to move into data science, and like candidate 1, just says they want to move into data science. Candidate 2 takes like a Coursera course on data science. Candidate 3 takes a course on data science, and maybe does a couple of projects on the side, right? Like there are certain things you can do to incrementally get yourself closer and closer to that career change, and also help you stand out. Because I also believe that a lot of people, especially a lot of hiring managers, are willing to take risks on people, right, that have high potential. And to do that, I think they need to have a certain belief that 1, you learn quickly, and then 2, you take initiative. So there's small things you can do, like the examples I just gave, that I think can incrementally help you get closer and closer, but also help you separate a little bit from the crowd. Because what you also have to realize is that you making that career change, you probably want to go to a better career opportunity. You probably move into a better career opportunity, and a lot of other people are likely doing that as well. So I think just the better the job opportunity, the more and more competition you have. So they're just at that point, part of it is just differentiating yourself.
I would also caution though, like grass is often greener on the other side. So don't just go and chase like that kind of sexier career, but make sure that it's actually the right one for you and something that you'll enjoy doing, because ideally you're going to be doing it for a long time.
Another thing I would add too is to think about what parts of your current role are actually applicable in your current and in the role that you want to go to, in their space that you're looking to go to, because a lot of skills are actually transferable, or actually perhaps you get the opposite perspective. So if you've ever been the account manager at a sales firm or something, like you have that other side of like you're trying to sell something. Well, now it would be great if you went to a role where you were actually perhaps purchasing a bunch of things, and now you have the other side and you have that other perspective. Those things end up being really valuable to companies or to you as your experience as well. So just think about what you have already and what's transferable, or what perspective is really unique. And then, like Kyle said, get the hard skills and see if you can test it out.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that and say my career pivot wasn't nearly as drastic as Charles explained what his was like leaving Microsoft. When I left IBM and I went to Leidos, I was trying to manage up and really build a case to my interviewers as to why my skills were transferable. So I think it's one thing to do all these things, but the final thing to get you across the finish line is to communicate and to say why that adds value to the interviewer. So you might say, look, I did a lot of instructional design. I worked graphic artist. I worked with SAP. I was teaching end users. I was at customer site. I spoke to them directly, so I understood their pain points. I understand user adoption challenges. And because I come with this unique lens, this unique skill set, this is why it's going to add value on the other side when I'm writing proposals, when I'm selling work, because I understand what maybe some customers, you have to kind of read between the lines. They don't always tell you this is our biggest challenge. You have to really pull that information out. And from somebody that once used to work side by side with an end user, you have a little bit more perspective as a writer who's selling a product or selling a solution. So my piece of advice is really drive it home and help connect those dots. It's one thing if you've taken the Coursera, it's one thing if you've had one-on-ones or job shadowing, make it known. Name drop, say during those conversations, I've talked to the following people. I was really impressed by the expertise that so-and-so, talked about their career journey. That's what really inspired me. So again, connecting the dots, I think, will be the slam dunk.
That's great stuff. Shifting a little bit, Lauren, you kind of mentioned before kind of about what's important to you, not to put you on the spot per se, but when I started my career 15 years ago, corporate social responsibility wasn't as maybe in the forefront as it is today. How are you as a manager, or how is your company using those values, and how is maybe those aligned with AKPsi's values?
Totally. So I can only speak to my values and my experience. I can't speak to anything about Google or Google's values today, unfortunately, as part of being here. But So one thing I will say is that I think regardless of company or individual, having core values and sticking to them and having that really authentic perspective and, showing up as a well-rounded individual with empathy and the things that you're really passionate about and your experience is something that is starting to become expected. So taking that time to really understand, like, what are your core values? What are the things that are most important to you? And how do you bring those with you to work? One of the things that I value tremendously is the diversity of perspectives. So I love working with a team where I am actually really bad at everything else that the team does, right? We all, the team that I work on at the moment, we all have very different strengths and we're all very open about that. And everyone lets everyone else kind of help them with their strengths. They lend their strengths to whatever problem that the team is collectively solving. And that's something that, is a value to me. And one of the reasons why I really like the team that I'm working with is because of that diversity of perspective. But it's really up to you to understand what your core values are. AKPsi has values. Any corporation has core values and guiding principles. Your college also has core values, I'm sure, as well. But it's really up to you to figure out what matters to you and then go forth with that and make career choices based on that and do work based on that as well.
Nice. And Kyle, I'm going to put you on the spot with that. As a kind of a leader of a company, certainly as in the founder role or co-founder role, how is corporate social responsibility, affecting your leadership style or affecting how you manage, your company?
It definitely plays a role, and I'll caveat by saying, I think business leaders more and more are put in a position to play a larger role in things that are happening in society. You saw that last year with the Black Lives Matter movement, currently with Stop Asian Hate and other social movements. And I think more and more companies have to play a role in these issues. Now, there's internal rules and there's external rules. And I think the two are different. And I think it's important that you don't conflate the two. I think it's equally important what you do internally than externally, and to make sure you actually walk the walk. So let's just give an example. For us, we have to also draw a line on what type of companies we will or will not work with, right? And it's important that we don't make it an ambiguous line. That line is not just Kyle's opinion, but is actually something that is core to what we believe in as a company. So giving us as an example, we work with user-generated content, and one of the main value props and reasons for us to exist is that we allow for a lot more diverse content and diverse representation in marketing. When you say go on online shopping and you think about buying a foundation and seeing it on someone who looks like you, right, ultimately helps. So for us, it's super important that both we think about the causes that we will or will not talk about, and also the causes in which we will support financially as a company, whether that is top down or whether that's matching donations or whether that is cultivating different resources. With that said, I think we're also not a nonprofit, right? Like our goal, like we're not a nonprofit, right? But that does not mean that we can't have certain kind of corporate social responsibility issues that we care about, because at the end of the day, our role is not to be a nonprofit. Our role is to really build a culture in a company that people are proud to work with and work at. And I think that if you think of that as the kind of one of the main goals, and the ability to recruit good talent and be comfortable with the work that you're doing, that's a pretty good like kind of North Star, I think, as a company, when you think about what do you lean into versus what do you kind of maybe stay away from in terms of just public statements and whatnot.
Oh, yeah. Charles, how's this topic kind of affect your investment decisions? Or is that a part of the investment decision as you're reviewing a company or an individual that you want to, kind of partner with?
Yeah, I can share an example of the previous company I was at. So my startup, we got acquired by Intuit. And while I was at Intuit, there was a time when people felt like we didn't really live up to our corporate values. So one of the values of Intuit is integrity without compromise. And there was a debacle with TurboTax where people felt like there was some shady marketing practices happening. And there's like a lot of internal reasons why that happened. And I don't think it was, a sinister reasoning, but still, like, internally and externally, people felt like we didn't really live up to those values. And in today's world, there's a lot of competition. People are free to choose other products, free to work at other companies. And when a company is only paying lip service to their values, people will choose other products, people will decide to leave. So that really hurt morale internally. Some people decided to leave because of that. I think that the leadership, corrected it and tried to improve that situation. But it's an example where there are monetary impacts to not living, your values. And now when I'm investing in companies, that's definitely something that I look at. Are the people that I'm investing in, are they ethically sound? Are they people that I feel are principled business leaders? Someone that won't have these issues, that will be able to attract and retain the best talent that is mission driven. And also, personally, I want to invest in companies that I believe in. I feel like they're making a positive impact in the world. And I want the founders of those companies to be running those types of businesses and want to run those types of businesses.
Beautiful. Maybe if we can do a little bit of around the horn. Obviously, this is a very unique time to be working in the workforce, let alone entering the workforce. Would each of you be able to speak to maybe what your company's kind of future looks like, and what that looks like with either that's business travel or working in the office, working in a hybrid situation? And then with that, is there any advice you'd give to people entering the workforce in whatever your new normal may look like?
Sure, I'll kick that one off. So I'm currently at Leidos, and Leidos has been very cautiously optimistic, and we have a return to work plan, but that comes with a handful of caveats. Right now the plan in place is we have a 4-staged approach. Stage 1 is 25% occupancy. Let's play it by ear, see what the COVID levels are like. To be quite honest, conversations have already started to happen with our management to kind of just pulse the workforce to say, we've really had a big aha moment where we realized our productivity levels are the same, if not higher, even though we've had a very geographically dispersed workforce. There are segments of our population that do go into the office or go into the Pentagon or go into a SCIF to perform work. But people like myself, I've been working from home since last March. So I think I celebrated the 1-year mark. I can't believe that. But how is this going to transform the way the workforce is going to be in regards to onboarding and bringing on new talent? I think at this stage, and again, I'm not with HR. I haven't done formal onboardings, but I have been an onboarding buddy to 2 folks that have joined since COVID started. And I think we're very agile. We've kind of had to evolve, as I think that's been a common theme through today's dialogue. And I think what we're doing is making a more conscious effort to have multiple touch points. So even though you can't swing by someone's desk and have a cup of coffee or sit with them at lunch and get to know them, on a more personal level, our leadership is doing these virtual coffee chats. We're encouraging more touch points so that we can have these informal Zooms. So our management is saying, if you feel comfortable flipping on your camera, we know people are working from home. There might be kids in the background, dogs barking. If you want to turn off your camera, that's fine. But we're trying to, I think, kind of break down some of the barriers that technology could potentially propose in these virtual environments. So I'm an extrovert. I love talking face to face with people. I think that's where I kind of draw on some of my energy. So I like working in a proposal pit. I like whiteboarding. I like doing Kanbans and Kaizens in person. So I'm looking forward to returning to work, but I think a hybrid model is definitely an option for a lot of Leidos employees here in the US.
I can't speak to anything about Google's return to work policy or what they're thinking about. Whatever you've read in the news is what I can tell you about. But I can talk about some skills or things that you actually might already know, because you have been doing this as a college student. And I think Jenny touched on some of this as well. It's really just making that extra effort. So where you might have, in your current life, run into other students from other majors in hallways, in your dorm room, maybe some of you are still there and getting to do that. You have to be a lot more intentional about who you're meeting, how you're meeting. Are you reaching out to people? Are you joining things? It's really weird. Your first few virtual coffee chats are a little weird. Virtual team building activities are a little weird. Virtual conferences like this one are a little weird. But my advice would be embrace the weirdness and be really, really intentional about it, because it's going to be really important going forward. And whether you're intentional about it because you're working remotely, or you're intentional about it because there's someone in particular that you want to meet who's not in your office location, it doesn't matter. The skill is the same, but you do need to think through that a little bit more than you would when you just just ran into people and things just sort of happen.
I can talk about it from the early stage startup side, both from investing and also founding companies. And this past 12 months, I've done maybe 10 deals, and I've met one person in person. Everyone else has been virtual. I've never met them in real life. And I think that's going to be the future for the most part. It allows me to talk to way more startups. I can talk to startups from around the world. So you don't have to be in the Bay Area to start a company anymore. You could be anywhere in the US, as long as you have good access to Wi-Fi. You can do that. I don't have to travel to investment meetings. I can just schedule a bunch of Zoom calls. And now the challenge is, how do you develop trust and build relationships virtually? That's still something that we're figuring out. And I think when things open up, there'll be more of a hybrid approach for that. From the founding side, I'm actually in the process of starting a new company, and all the co-founders I've talked to, I've never met in person. So this allows me to potentially partner with people on the other side of the country, expand the people I can recruit from. We're talking about building companies, not just hybrid, but remote first. So never having an office from day one. So I definitely think it just expands the possibilities of what you can do in business, and rethink the office and what a office culture looks like when everyone's working from home. I think there's certain people that want that lifestyle. And now it's just figuring out, how do you get the advantages of the community and the serendipity that comes with an office space, and do that virtually. So that's exciting challenges to figure out. But I'm looking forward to this kind of more opportunities and more options for people.
Yeah, I think being able to significantly increase the pool of candidates that you choose from by having at least some sort of remote offering is a huge competitive advantage for any business. So I think that as a business, you need to really be thinking about that, because talent is everything in what you do, right? With that said, however, there are some tangible benefits to an office, such as creative work, being able to collaborate on a whiteboard versus on a Zoom screen. It's just not the same. And another example is, a lot of times, if it's a phone call or Zoom, sometimes there's a little bit of misunderstanding at times, because you maybe you don't get to know, maybe Tim and I don't have a formal relationship because we never grabbed coffee. I don't know about him, and we're working, and then I don't really know or trust him yet, right? So I think there are certain things about in person, whether there's the casual lunches or coffee, that allows for more creativity and spontaneity, but also just building that trust and understanding. And my worry is that as we're naturally going to be a little more remote and hybrid, there's going to be a lot more asynchronous communication versus synchronous communication, especially if people are across different time zones, that there will be more misunderstandings. And a lot of times those misunderstandings become really challenging cultural problems as well, because they snowball and they build upon each other versus that one-on-one focus and whatnot. And even you'll be in meetings with people and they'll be multitasking and doing email and not fully paying attention, right? So that thing naturally happens. But like I said, there's also a lot of benefits to that remote hybrid work. One of them most being just the ability to really just find the best people in the world to work at your company versus just San Francisco and New York.
It's a lot of interesting perspective, and it's fun how you want to be back in the office in the creative space, but at the same time, it's really neat to be able to expand your network to talk to 10 companies across the world in a day, or different teams, and that's okay nowadays. That might have been different, just a year and a half ago, where that efficiency of communication, you have to be more intentional with it, but certainly it's there. As you've progressed in your careers, a lot of companies have formal mentoring programs. Is there someone outside of the company that you currently work for that maybe has been a sounding board for you as a formal or informal mentor? And if so, how did you find that person?
I guess I'll start. I think a lot of our investors are, I guess, more formal mentors of mine, and especially early on angel investors. I think a lot of them honestly just want you to be successful as a person. At least the good ones want you to be successful as a person. But if the question is more about finding mentors, and to begin with, I think I found like sometimes the most successful people or the best mentors I've had really want to give back. So it's like an innate thing that they're trying to do is find, the next generation, pay it forward to the next generation. And I think part of, kind of what I mentioned earlier is I think you can really actually stand out just by doing that little bit extra legwork, whether it's a proper follow-up, actually doing what was recommended, sending a more personalized note that actually has a more tangible thing, because these people are busy. So just being a little more conscious of if you're going to be asking for time or asking for something, like what is being a little more clear about it, and also obviously being respectful of the time as well.
I've never really believed in formal mentorship. It just comes off as like very inauthentic to me. But to me, the best mentors that I've had have been people in organizations or companies that I've been in that are just a little bit more senior than I am, that I can form a real relationship with and a friendship with, that I can go to and ask questions and just develop something that feels really natural. It doesn't feel like, can I be your mentor and something like that. It's someone that I could go to and just text and have an authentic relationship with. So I would try to find those people in the organizations you're in, whether that's AKPsi or anything else you do, or in the companies that you're in, that you can look up to and that you can just form a real bond with. Those have been the best mentors, and they will stand, even if you leave this organization or leave this company, they will still be there for you.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, because I wouldn't say I've had formal mentors in my career. The folks that I've leaned on for advice are informal, but they're also an advocate. So I don't know if some people define those as two separate things. I think they can sometimes be one and the same, depends on the individual. But I think one of the best things you can get out of an advocate is somebody that's going to help push you out of your comfort zone, and help give you exposure to things that are really going to help you grow or to think differently. So again, a mentor could be a sounding board, but for me, my advocates are the ones that have pushed me into really some stretch assignments that allowed me to take on incremental responsibility. And they're the ones that will really help set you up for success. They'd say, I think Jenny would do really well just being a fly on the wall and listening to this type of meeting that we're about to have. If, she's not exposed to mergers and acquisitions, I think having her exposed to this type of dialogues could be, extremely beneficial. This is something that you'll have to work out with every mentor or advocate that you have. But the ones that I have found to be beneficial for me in my career are the ones that have opened some doors.
Nice. We're down to our final 4 minutes, I believe. Four presenters. Is there any closing thoughts? If I gave each of you, 45 seconds or a minute that you want to communicate to the audience that hasn't been you haven't been able to share yet?
Yes, I'll say one thing, and I'll keep it very short, and that is, no one out there is a mind reader. If you want to progress, if you want to grow, if you want to do a career transition, then make it known. And then I'm a big fan of managing up. If you want a new opportunity, voice it. And then I'm a big fan of connecting the dots and making it, super easy to understand. Let people know what you're interested in, why you're qualified, or where your transferable skills lie and how you're going to add value. Because you might have all those great accolades on paper, but if you don't say them and stand up for yourself, no one's going to really know.
I'll add to that in that I think you should be really intentional with your career. I think it's really easy to just let it happen and look down 5-10 years down the road and realize you end up not where you wanted to be. So be very thoughtful. Like, is this what you want to be doing? Like, what's your next step? Where do you want to go from here? And follow what Jenny said. Be very proactive about that, making sure you're learning what you want to learn, doing what you want to do. So be very intentional is my closing thought.
I would piggyback on that. Be intentional, but also know that your career is not a linear journey. If you're just starting your career, you don't know what job is going to exist 30 years from now when you're towards the end of your career. Be intentional in every step that you take, but it's not a linear journey, and go with the twists and turns, because sometimes they end up being the most interesting, most transformative. They end up helping you figure out what that next thing is. And it turns out to be the best thing that you ever did, even though it's not what you thought it was going to be. Go with the mess.
Yeah. And I'll say that one of the most interesting things about starting a professional career at this time is the rate of change that's happening all over the place. In every single industry, that rate of change creates a lot of new opportunities for people to accelerate the careers, but also leapfrog. So, for example, like for us, when we started the company, Instagram was only around for a year. So the max amount of years that everyone had on Instagram and marketing on Instagram was one, versus TV advertising. There are people with 40 years of experience there, and there's no way that I would have been able to kind of leapfrog and have these career opportunities had that rate of change not happen. So I would definitely kind of just pay attention to kind of what's changing around and how you can better position yourself towards one of those tailwinds, because if you can catch one of those right tailwinds, it really helps in terms of upward mobility in your career.
That's awesome. That was wonderful. I think some great closing thoughts. Thank you all. I think this was very, very wonderful. I think you guys did a great job. I'd like to give a shout out to Jason and Mackenzie, who have been organizing this and a lot of events throughout the day. They've been working really hard, especially in a virtual environment. And I will turn it back over to Thomas. I probably gave you about 6 seconds to close. But thanks, Thomas, for all your service to the fraternity, and thanks for being here today.